Good evening, friends, and welcome to yet another awesome and amazing session of Mindful Living. We really appreciate your taking out time and joining us for the celebration of 75th year of Indian independence. Allow me a minute to let few people join in. I'll request everybody to keep yourself on mute. The reason we are able to celebrate this freedom from the safety of our homes is because many brave hearts fight tooth and nail, fight bravely on the borders. They fight with the challenges internally, and in the process, lose. We sadly lose some lives. Many lose their limbs. And we are fortunate to have one such braveheart with us, General Ian Cardozo, who was commissioned into the Army in 1954, graduating from NDA with honors, a gold medal for being the best all-round cadet, and silver medal for being first in order of merit. He was commissioned into the Gorkha Rifles, and he was the first officer of the Indian Army to be awarded the Sena Medal for gallantry on a patrol on the Sino-Indian border in 1959. He subsequently took part in the Sino-Indian War of 1962 and the INDO-PAK wars of 1965 and 1971. He's the first disabled officer of the Indian Army to command an infantry battalion and brigade. And we salute you, General Ian, for inspiring so many of us with what you have accomplished in your life. He was handpicked by Government of India for appointment as chairman of the Rehabilitation Council of India and presently serves as the chairman of the Board of Management of the Center for Armed Forces Historical Research. He's an acclaimed author, having written many books which include Paramveer, The Sinking of INS Kukri, The Bravest of the Brave, Indian VCs of World War I, the Indian Army in World War I, Lieutenant General Billy Moria, His Life and Times, and 1971, The Stories of Grit and Glory, one of my favorite books of all times. General Ian, welcome to this session of Mindful Living.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone.
Thank you, General Ian. General Ian is joining us from Singapore, friends. There are many of you who are joining us for the first time. If you are joining a Mindful Living session for the first time, please type FT in the chat box. If you are joining a session of Mindful Living for the first time, friends, please type FT first time in the chat box. Thank you for your responses, friends. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'll take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Ashish Kumar, and I am the founder of Mindful Living. I started Mindful Living in 2018 after working in the corporate sector in senior management roles for over 25 years. During the years of my working in the corporate sector, I saw how stressed people are and how this stress takes a toll on their health, on their happiness, and well-being. I thought there has to be a way to live mindfully and deal with these challenges. And with this mission, we started Mindful Living to help with a mission to help 1 million working professionals lead healthier, happier, and wealthier lives. We have been fortunate to be invited by leading corporations in India to address their employees on how to live stress-free lives and improve their productivity. We have conducted over 300 sessions for leading organizations that include Aditya Birla Group, Tata Group, IBM, EXL, Swiggy, Schneider, Signify, and many more. The session today is being organized as a part of our community initiative, which started in April 2020, when few of my friends requested me to conduct a session for them to deal with the stress that was being caused by the uncertainty of the lockdown. So it was on a weekend when 10 of my friends got together and I conducted a session on mindfulness meditation for them. One thing led to the other. And in the last 2 years, we have grown to be a vibrant community of over 3,000 people who connect every weekend to practice mindfulness, to practice application of mindfulness in our daily lives. In case you would like to be a part of the mindful living community, please type MLC in the chat and we'll be sharing the link of the community WhatsApp group for you to join. The sessions are complimentary and there is no agenda. We stay away from political and religious topics and only focus on something which can help us improve the quality of our lives. On that note, a few groundkeeping rules. We would really appreciate if you can keep your camera on and use the reactions button to show, stay engaged and show whenever General Ian shares something which touches your heart or you feel like showing thumbs up or clap. And towards the end of the session, we will be taking questions and answers. Please raise your hand using the emoticon here, and then we will invite you to ask your questions. On that note, General Ian, welcome to you and over to you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Good to be with you today. I would like to start by saying, keeping in mind what your focus is, to tell you that as far as the lives that we live in the army are concerned, we do believe that no one can really value life unless he has lived in the shadow of death. And as far as the army is concerned, all of us soldiers keep living in the shadow of death, and therefore life to us is very, very precious. And keeping in mind what you said about mindful living, I think we need to keep in focus the rich traditions, customs of India, Ayurveda, and all that we have with us. Unfortunately, the people of India today are gravitating towards the West, where the West is gravitating towards us. So there's lots of wealth of information and knowledge and understanding in our own culture, which we should now understand and go into depth so that we can understand what life is all about. As far as the war is concerned, you've given me 20 minutes to talk about the war, but you know, it's a war which lasted 13 days. It is a war, 13 days is a very, very short time. And in military history, this is perhaps the shortest war, but yet it has a lot of ground to cover. The first thing we need to know is that what was the cause of this war? Why did this war start? This war started as an internal problem of Pakistan. Pakistan, as you know, at that time had two wings, the Western wing and the Eastern province, East Pakistan and West Pakistan. At that time, in December 1970, an election was held and East Pakistan won a massive victory, which meant that the President of Pakistan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, the main cabinet ministers would all be Bengalis. And this, the Pathans and the Punjabis of West Pakistan were not prepared to accept, particularly Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and as well as Yahya Khan. So these two decided that whatever ambitions East Pakistan had for self-governance must be put an end to. They organized an operation called Operation Searchlight, where tanks, artillery, machine guns, small arms were used against defenseless citizens of Bangladesh. 1 million people were killed. Women and girls were raped in front of their men. 10 million horrified refugees came over to India, and India was therefore responsible for their health, for their well-being, for their food, for their water, for their medical support. And the Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, was very upset. She went and met the refugees and was horrified to learn the stories which were told to her of people being fed to leopards and panthers in cages, being thrown into furnaces, and the like. And she came back and took up a case with Yahya Khan. Please stop this genocide. Yahya Khan refused to even listen. So she decided to take the matter to the world capitals and to the UN, but they too were led by the United States of America, as it is happening today. When you look at what is happening in Ukraine and what happened in 1971, the world was led by the nose by the USA at that time, as it is being done today. So when she found that no one was prepared to listen to her, she decided that, well, we need to have these citizens, these refugees go back to their own country, and maybe a military operation will be required to ensure that they have enough space in their own country to go back to. So she called the army chief, General Sam Manekshaw, and told him that, General, we need to march into East Pakistan so that the refugees can go back. But India was not prepared. In fact, we need to understand that our intelligence system is so poor and our systems are such. The army was not prepared. And he was very frank and told her very categorically that the army is in no situation to go to war. Our tanks are not working. We don't have enough ammunition. We don't have enough weapons. Our soldiers are not trained. So she said, why? And he explained to her that the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Finance had not listened to his pleas over the last so many years. We had a very strong Prime Minister, and she took the matter into her hands and ensured that whatever deficiencies were existing were made up. For the first time, the Indian Army got time to prepare, to train, to get equipped properly, to understand what the situation was. And he told her also that it is now the month of April, Madam Prime Minister, and the monsoons are going to start. And Bangladesh is a riverine country, and it will be boggy. Our tanks will get bogged down, and it will not be possible for me to guarantee you victory. If you want victory, let me do it my way. And she said, what is that, General? And he said, give me the opportunity to decide the time of our operations and how and when and what we will need to do. We were lucky. At that time, both the Army, Navy, and Air Force were very close in cooperating with each other. And there was good synergy between the armed forces, the politicians, and the bureaucrat. The Prime Minister listened to what the chief had to say. Logic was applied, and the result was a tremendous victory at the end of it all. The important lesson to be learned is the principle of cooperation. Cooperation is the principle of war, and cooperation is not only limited to the armed forces. It applies to every walk of life: family, corporates, schools, teachers, children. Cooperation is very important. And it is this main principle of war which gave us victory. For the first time, the armed forces got enough time to prepare for war, and the result, as I mentioned earlier, was an extraordinary victory. The war was concluded within 13 days. 93,000 prisoners were captured, and East Pakistan was liberated and Bangladesh was born. In this matter, we need to understand the silent service. The Indian Navy did an extraordinary job, both in the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal. For the first time, the armed forces were absolutely prepared when Pakistan launched her attack on the 3rd of December at 5:45 p.m. when she raided all our airfields. We were ready and prepared, and immediately we set off our counter operations in Army, Navy, and Air Force. On the 4th of December, the Indian Navy went off towards Karachi and in the process destroyed a Pakistani destroyer, a minesweeper, ammunition, ship carrying ammunition, oil tanker, and Karachi was set on fire and burned for 7 days and 7 nights. Actually, Admiral Nanda, who was the chief at that time, you see, I take you back a little into time. In 1965, Indonesia was out to grab the Nicobar Islands, and the Indian Navy was deployed in the Bay of Bengal. And when war broke out, the government of India told the Indian Navy that they will not launch offensive operations in the Arabian Sea. This caused a lot of discomfort, and the Navy was very upset, but they had to do as ordered. But Admiral Nanda said, this has been an insult to our honor, and given the right time and place, I will set Karachi on fire. I've been born there and I know Karachi like the back of my hand. And that is exactly what happened. So I would like to inform the listeners that we need to give more credit to the Indian Navy. It has never got the credit it deserves. In the Eastern Seaboard, again, it did a fantastic job. So the Indian Army was able to carry out its operations without hindrance only because the Indian Air Force, within the first few days of the war, destroyed Pakistan Air Force in East Pakistan. And all army operations could be executed without any hindrance. We carried out river crossing operations, we carried out amphibious operations, we carried out paradrops, we carried out heliborne operations. Every possible operation was carried out as though it was in copybook fashion. So the Indian Navy, the Indian Air Force, and the Indian Army cooperated together in a fantastic manner to ensure an outstanding victory. My own battalion, I would also like to bring to your attention the fact that leadership in war, particularly in land operations, devolves on the shoulders of young officers. The young officer does not say, "Tum aage jao, main piche aa raha hu." He says, "Mere piche move, follow me." And the Indian soldier, the best in the world, follows the young tigers. And when that young officer dies, because he's right there in the front, facing the brunt of the enemy offensive, and once that happens, once he dies, then the JCOs and the NCOs take over to fulfill the objective. In this matter, my battalion, the 4th Battalion, the 5th Gurkha Rifles, we started the war with 18 officers, and within 13 days, we had lost 4 officers killed, 7 officers wounded, only 7 survived. So it just tells you how important leadership is, and we lead always from the front. Sam Manekshaw, as usual, in his very humorous way, he sums up the war by saying that before partition, Yahya Khan and he were both working in Military Operations Directorate and Army Headquarters. And Sam had a motorbike which Yahya Khan wanted very badly. So Sam gave him the motorbike, and Yahya Khan promised to pay him 1,000 rupees for the purchase of that bike, which he never did. And Sam said, 25 years later, he paid me with half his country. So that in summary is a basic outline of the war. The story, I think, is reasonably well told in my book, 1971, Stories of Grit and Glory. It has 4 stories about the Navy, 2 about the Air Force, and 8 about the Army and the Air Force. The history of this war has been written, but I don't think that history is everybody's cup of tea. And I've decided to tell the story about this war in the form of short stories because everybody likes a story. In the book, I hear, sorry, is doing reasonably well. It's gone into a second edition, and Penguin has decided to Penguin has decided to bring it out in audio form also. So if you want to know the whole story, do read the book. I think that is for the moment all that I need to say about the war. And now I leave it to you, Ashish, to take it forward.
Thank you so much, General Ian, for sharing those stories. So powerful and so moving. What you shared that he owed him 1,000 rupees but paid with half his country is something which will resonate with many people here. I think that was amazing. And there are many questions. I'll let Shashi go ahead and ask his question.
Good afternoon, sir. Absolute honor to be in your presence. One quick question, actually 2 questions. One about the history of the war that you mentioned. See, the general who's supposed to have signed the treaty or whatever of defeat was one General Niazi.
Yes.
So is he related to our present Imran Ahmad Khan Niazi?
Yes.
The ex-prime minister.
Yes, he is related to the ex-Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan. They are related.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because I always had a doubt, but I couldn't find any answer for it in Google. So this is something I want to bet with someone. See, the second question is, and this is about leadership since you mentioned. See, the first time people came together, right, was as hunters gatherers, was to fight, was to defend themselves against wild animals, etc. And then later on wage wars and fought. And so all our lessons on leadership, organization build, organization relationships, and organization behavior, etc., comes from first from the army, later on from the sports, right? So leadership in terms of peace, when we talk of leadership, and we all talk about times where there is a victory over an enemy, and what are your views, and why do we not talk about leaders during peace times as well? And I'm not talking political leaders, about people, and neither godmen, about people who have brought in change, who have taken things to the next level in society, because our current system that we live as human beings in society, the rules have been formed over centuries, and as a civilization. Why are leaders always examples of leaders? And I'm sorry if it is sounding, I hope I'm able to get across what I'm trying to say correctly. Leadership is always talked about a defeat over or victory over an enemy, not about a peaceful times of peace. So why are leaders, or at least why we don't have examples of leaders during peace?
Oh, that's not a very easy question to answer, but I'll try to answer it. There are 2 things: leadership and management. In the corporate world, leadership and management are both important, as well as in the armed forces. Leadership and management are also very important. The issue here is The first thing that is required in a leader at any level is vision. He needs to know what his organization is all about, what are his objectives over a period of time, and how does he intend to get there. We in the Army also have something known as the 10 principles of war. These guide us and help us to keep our course correct to achieve what is the overall aim. You're quite right when you say that leadership is not only in war, it is also in peace. And what is very important today, when we have anti-terrorist operations, anti-counterinsurgency operations, etc., it is more important to win the hearts and minds of the people you are dealing with, rather than to have bodies of the enemy. When you kill someone, you create so many more enemies. Therefore, leadership means doing what is right, irrespective of the consequences. And in our country, we have customs, tradition, ethics, which guide us as to how we can make India the best country in the world. I'm not saying the most powerful country in the world. I'm not saying the richest country in the world. I'm saying the best country in the world. And that means everybody should be happy, doing what is required. And therefore, we need to have the right vision and the right leaders to enforce or ensure that that vision is carried out. So I was talking to a school, and a 12-year-old boy, I was talking about the fact that India had all the resources, material and human, to be the most powerful country in the world. And he said, sir, do you want India to be the most powerful country in the world? Or do you want it to be the happiest country, the best country in the world? And this 12-year-old boy, I think, said the right thing. What you are saying, that leadership should be such that everybody's needs are taken care of, everybody is listened to, everybody is explained the reasons why things happen, and we build on our strengths and try to eliminate our weaknesses. That's what I think leadership is all about. But for that, you need enlightened leadership right at the top. I hope I've been able to answer your question somewhat.
Wanted what I was thinking. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shashi, for that question. And thank you, General Ian, for holding out on that one. And we have Madhuri here who has got a question. Madhuri, please.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, General Ian, and hello, everyone. Mine is, I have a question and a few observations, but the question first, definitely, since I'm, by the way, by proxy, a Fauji, because I'm a Fauji daughter and a Fauji wife. Since 1971 and cut to the present day, the army has had to reinvent itself in many ways. For example, I mean, one of the examples being, that you have to be tech savvy and so on. So the definition of the foot soldier and his job role as maybe even an infantryman has definitely changed. Now, my question, General, is that this recent thing about these Agniveers and all of that they have started, the 5-year conscription, is it going to help avert or fight future wars? The Agniveers.
Ma'am, this is a very political question, and I'm a soldier.
Yes.
However, I try to answer. At the risk of being slightly political, I would like to say that the Indian Army Armed Forces today are going through the shades of 1962.
Okay.
In the sense, at that time, we had a policeman who was fashioning the strategy against the Chinese. When General Thorat, the vice chief, presented our strategy against China, the Prime Minister, Mr. Nehru, said, no need. We will look at the strategy by Mr. B.M. Malik, who was the head of the IB and a policeman. And he invented a strategy which had small posts facing the Chinese. It was called the forward posture. It made no tactical sense, and it was implemented both in Ladakh and in Nifa, and the result, we all know what happened. Today, we also have someone who is fashioning the strategy. Whether he is qualified to do so is a matter of debate. So, unfortunately, the bureaucracy is very much against the armed forces.
Yeah.
These are things one should, I would like to keep away from, but since you asked the question, I have no option but to answer. But the bureaucrat has put in the mind of the politician the fear that unless you keep the army under control, they will take over the country. It's something which is quite stupid, but that is what has happened. And so this policy of INDO-PAK and Agniveer is totally disastrous. It is not good for the army, it's not good for the country, and I'm only wondering, as and when we go to war with China, and I can assure you that that war will happen someday, because the people who are going to be trained for 4 years, in 4 years, how much can you train people? And there are so many negative disadvantages of this policy, which people are not prepared to listen to. However, I've retired now, nearly 30 years ago, not fully conversant with exactly what INDO-PAK and Agniveer is all about. But logically, I don't think it is something which is good for the army or for the country.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madhuri, for that question. And thank you, General Ian, for your frank response on that. We have received this question from Saurabh, and this is addressed to you. Major General Cardozo had read about you and how you challenged the orthodox way of thinking and turned it upside down. I'm just reading it, sir. Hats off to you, sir. What keeps you going? Who would you credit for the unrelenting passion?
I actually really don't know. But the fact is that we are what we are. We are shaped by the environment. I was shaped by my mother and father, the family, who gave me the values and taught me never to give up. My school, St. Xavier's School and College, which again taught us the right values in life. And all these shaped me to be what I am. And when we were told after I lost my leg that you can no longer go back to your troops, you can no longer command troops, I felt very bad because the army is not a job. The army is a way of life. And that life has no equal. And we joined the army for that way of life. And what was going to keep me away just because I had a wooden leg? While I was in hospital, I read a book called Reach for the Sky. It was about a Royal Air Force pilot who lost both legs and who learned to fly once again. He became an air ace and he shot down 21 German aircraft fighters and was shot down himself over Germany. And when ejecting from his plane, he lost both his wooden legs and his stumps were damaged. The Germans were excited and very happy to capture him, and they took him to hospital. And they asked him, "What do you want?" So he said, "I've got two reserve legs in England. Can you have them flown over to me?" So Germany and England got together, and an aircraft, Dakota, was flown across, and his legs were dropped. And they gave him his legs. What did he do? That night he escaped. He escaped, but how far could he go with two wooden legs in winter in the snow? So they captured him, brought him back, took away his legs, put him on the first floor of the hospital. What did he do? At night, he got off his bed, he crawled from bed to bed, pulled off the sheets, made a rope, tied it to a bed, got out of the window, rappelled down to the ground, and crawled in the snow till he was caught once again. So this never say die, never giving up was something which appealed to me. And I thought, if he could do all this, why can't I? And I decided to do whatever I could to make sure that I and others like me could get back to our roots. I didn't know how I would do it, but I decided to take one day at a time, to make every challenge an opportunity. And with God's grace and the blessings of my parents and all of you, it worked. So, whereas the army is a very hierarchical and rigid system, they accepted because I proved that I could run, that I could swim, that I could climb. And when I did all this, I had gone with the vice chief to J&K, and they were going up from post to post in a helicopter, and I was taking the vehicles down. In the last post, I learned that a friend of mine was commanding this post. So I decided to go and meet him. So I climbed up. I didn't think that I was doing anything extraordinary. But the vice chief, when he landed, he said, "How have you come here?" So I said, "I climbed." So he said, "You can climb." I said, "Sir, what I cannot do lies in the minds of my senior officers." So he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Sir, battle casualties have not been given the chance to prove what they can do and what they can't do." That changed the opinion of the military hierarchy. And the army chief took me on a tour to Ladakh where I climbed over snow and ice. And he called for my file and said, "Yes, give him a battalion and all other war disabled officers who are not taking shelter at their rooms." This changed the whole system in the army headquarters. And then battle casualties, one of them without two legs, reached the rank of army commander, which is one rank below the chief. And that created some sort of history. This is something I admit I'm a little proud about. I changed the system of promotion of battle care.
Thank you so much, General Ian. There are so many messages we are receiving in the chat on how you are inspiring us. That's truly, truly amazing to hear that story. General Ian, earlier in the conversation, you mentioned about how cooperation between different armed forces, politicians, bureaucrats was a key factor in the success in our war. But today, in the context of a modern corporation, we see that often we find the departments in the organizations like HR or finance or marketing, sales. They are not cooperating with each other to ensure that the organizational objectives get met. Is there any message you would like to share with the business heads on how to deal with the situation where people are not truly aligned with each other and they beat the objective?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this a bit earlier on, that cooperation is an important principle of war, and it is important for all of us to understand that unless we cooperate, we can never get the right outcomes. So What management needs to understand is that they need to make their people feel special. And that in the army, we are told that ours is an extraordinary profession, and therefore we live extraordinary lives, and therefore we have to be extraordinary people. In that, we place country first, our soldiers next, and self last. Management and leadership in the corporate sector has to understand that their main resource is people, and people are important, and they must be made to feel special. Then we are told that our calling is special, that there is no sacrifice that is too great. We always have to place country first. So how can the corporate sector make their personnel gel with the organization, with the aims of the organization, and made to feel that their calling, their job, their profession is very important, and therefore sacrifices need to be made, because survival is important. You know, as I said in the beginning, no one can know the value of life unless he has lived in the shadow of death. Similarly, unless people are made to understand that the corporation they work for, the system they work for, is important. I don't know whether what I'm saying makes sense, because the industrial revolution has now changed. People now today go from job to job. And so how can they be made to feel that it is important, the office, the organization, the institution they work for is important. So I don't think there can be the same commitment that the soldier has for his profession as a person in the corporate sector for his institution. You know, right from the beginning when we joined the NDA, we are always told, country first, the soldiers are next, and self last. There is no sacrifice too great for the nation. When Lieutenant Manoj Pandey, Paramveer Chakra, was dying on the battlefield of Kargil, he said, I regret that I have only one life to give for my country. So our dedication, our commitment to the way of life, to the army and the country is total. Can that be replicated in the corporate sector? That depends upon leadership. So whatever difficulties come our way, we make sure that we take it in our stride. You must remember that the armed forces is not a job. It's a way of life. And that life has no equal. In this, we are taught also never to be arrogant, never to be proud. We need to be kind, we need to be concerned about others, and we need to be balanced, and we need not hate our enemy. We have a job to do, and we should do it in a clinical fashion. When in the 1971 war, the government of India did a very good thing. It allowed foreign correspondents to accompany our troops into battle. They ate with our troops, they marched with our troops, they slept alongside, and the world got unbiased reportage on the war. And Sidney Shanberg of the New York Times had this to say about the Indian soldier. He said, the Indian soldier never stepped out of line. His behavior was ethical, and he never behaved badly even after he saw how brutal the enemy had been. So it's a combination of many things. It is commitment, it is vision, it is belief in one's cause, belief in the country, and a total commitment to not only a way of life, but to the country. So can this be replicated in the corporate sector? You can try, and I think you can achieve some measure of success, provided you have the right leadership and the right personal characteristics and qualities.
Thank you, General Ian, for those insights. You mentioned about BBC in your during the course of the answer, and BBC played a key role, as you have outlined in the book, the glorious blunder, if I may say. Would you like to share that story with our audience here? That's an amazing story to listen to.
Yeah, it is. I would like to emphasize here that what the BBC did was we used that wrong reportage. You see, at that time, the BBC, the All India Radio, and Pakistan Radio were all reporting on the war. Pakistan Radio was known as Radio Pakistan. Nobody believed Pakistan, even the Pakistanis did not believe their broadcasts. All India Radio had to get clearance from Army headquarters, and so they were normally a day late. But as I said earlier, the government of India allowed foreign correspondents to report the war as it occurred, and they were getting minute-to-minute reportage on the war. In that process, coming back to the operation, my battalion conducted the first heli-borne operation in Indian military history. We had an outstanding commanding officer in Lieutenant Colonel Arun Harolekar. We had already fought the Battle of Akram, where he conducted what is now known as the last kukri attack in modern military history. We attacked at night, and we took the enemy completely by surprise, and it was a kukri attack. And we dismembered many of the Pakistani soldiers, and that night, the blade of the kukri flashed in the moonlight, and the Pakistanis had the mortification of hearing the war cry of my battalion, Ayo Gurkhali, and that was the flare of terror in them. And those who survived ran back and told the others, don't mess with the Gurkhas because you'll lose your head. Having done that, the trouble in war is that when you are very successful, then you get more and more difficult tasks. So the corps commander, one of the finest corps commanders, field commanders in Indian military history, ordered the battalion to capture a place called Ghazipur. It was a tough battle, and we lost a lot of officers and men. By this time, we had lost 3 officers killed, 4 officers wounded, only 11 officers survived. And the CO was trying to reorganize the battalion when the corps commander got information that the brigade which was holding Sylhet had gone for the defense of Dhaka. And he wanted the Gurkhas to go in a heli-borne operation and capture Sylhet before the Pakistanis could reinforce that area. The CO mentioned that he had needed time to reorganize the battalion, but the corps commander said, nothing doing, go immediately. In the army, you can protest up to a point. After that, orders are orders. Lieutenant Colonel Harolekar did the best he could, decided to use this challenge as an opportunity, got hold of his JSOs and the officers. He had hardly any time. It was the quickest heliborne operation in military history. At 7:30 in the morning, we got orders to fly into Sylhet. At 9 o'clock, a helicopter came for the recce of the CO, and by 2:30, we were inducted into Sylhet. We were told that there are just 200 people, 200 Razakars. Razakars are irregular soldiers holding Sylhet because the brigade has moved to Sylhet. Sorry, to Dhaka. When we landed there, we were faced with a lot of opposition. But we did not know what the strength of the enemy was. To cut a long story short, we fought 7 days and 7 nights. Sorry, 9 days and 9 nights. But we went in on the 7th of December. On the 9th of December, while we were still getting to grips with the enemy, a BBC correspondent got mixed up between the terms battalion and brigade and said a brigade of Gurkhas has added at Sylhet. We decided to use this information to put terror into the minds of the Pakistani that we were in great strength, whereas actually we were only 384. It is not that this announcement of the BBC won the war or won the battle. We, the Gurkhas, my commanding officer, Colonel Harulekar, and our officers and JSOs and Jawans decided to use this bit of this information to convince the Pakistanis that we were in great strength. And finally, when the surrender took place, the Pakistanis were shocked to learn that by this time, our strength was just 352. We, on our part, were shocked beyond understanding because 173 officers, 290 JCOs, and 3 brigadiers, 2 full colonels, 173 officers, 290 GSOs, and approximately 8,000 troops surrendered to us. We were just 352. So it was just that this bit of misinformation helped us to turn the tables on a vast superior force. But it was the guts, the commitment, the dedication of my commanding officer, the company commanders, the men who fought unequivocally to defeat a force 20 times our strength.
What an amazing story, General Ian. Just for the benefit of everybody, I'll just reiterate what General Ian said. It was 250 soldiers, you said, General Ian? 300?
No, 352 when by the time the surrender took place.
352 soldiers fought against a force.
No. 384 when we landed. And by the time we surrendered, we were 352.
384 when they landed and 352 by the time surrender took place. They fought with a force which had 3 brigadiers, 173 officers, and 8,000 soldiers. So about 352 people took on a force which was more than 20 times their size. What an inspirational story, General Ian. Truly amazing. And on that note, I would also like to invite you to share with us how was the surrender organized?
Say again?
How was the surrender organized?
Oh, the surrender, it happened this way, that on the 15th evening, a whole lot of Pakistanis came waving white flags. Now, by this time, we came to know that we were facing a large force. And the CO very rightly decided that you can't trust the Pakistanis. That if they came to know we were such a small force, they might change their mind to surrender and attack. And so he told the company commander to fire a machine gun burst close to these people. And they stopped and went back. And they sent two young officers with white flags to say that they wanted to surrender. So they were told, the CO sent a message and told the company commander, tell them that we have got no orders to accept your surrender. Please go back and continue the fight. So then they said, can we talk to the brigade commander? Then we realized that we had managed to bluff them that we were a brigade. In actual fact, we were half a brigade. So then we said, you go back and we will talk to the brigade commander will let you know. Then we got onto the radio, spoke to the brigade commander and said, sir, please come and take over the surrender. So he came in a helicopter and he landed in the battalion area and he walked across with an escort to accept the surrender. So the senior brigadier said to him, who has come in this helicopter? So he said, I have. He said, aren't you here? He said, no, I'm not here. I'm 100 miles away. Then he said, then what is here? And then the brigade commander told him, it is only a Gurkha battalion, and that too, half a battalion. And that is why they were absolutely shocked.
Amazing, General Ian. What a story. What a story. And we are getting so many responses. You know, I'm getting goosebumps reading those responses. Thank you, Vikram. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Amitabh, for sharing your comments. Friends, you know, however much we would like this conversation to go on, I realize that we are towards the end of the session. But before I ask last question to Ian, General Ian, I would request you to share your feedback in this feedback form that we are, the link we are putting out in the chat. This will take you less than 30 seconds. Please give your feedback to us. It is very valuable. And then we will move on and take the last question with General Ian. Just give me a sec, friends. So here is the feedback form. Please fill it out. And once you have filled out the feedback form, please type FD in the chat box, feedback done. And while you're filling out this feedback form, which takes 30 seconds, I'll invite Mr. Dayal to share his question. This is the last question we will take, and then we will.
Thank you, Ashish. First of all, thank you for sharing us the background of the video. So we know exactly General Ian Cardos. It is a name imprinted on our heart and soul henceforth. And General explaining lucidly the war-like situation. Like my view explanation is like war is the last option. When all other options fail, the war is there, which you clearly explained. If one side is bent upon going ahead with it. Now coming presently, first the deepest gratitude. I will this thing like the name is. First of all, I would like to take the privilege on behalf of all the participants to thank you for sharing your superhuman efforts live today. And deepest salutations for the deepest gratitude from our hearts. So you are our real hero in the truest sense. Now, in this 23rd century, we are still, in spite of being so much forward, we are still seeing wars like situation in Russia, Ukraine, then China, Taiwan coming up, and our neighbors inciting constantly. So do you think we are heading for another war, this thing situation? And I have a couple of more questions, if you don't mind, if you permit me. Yes.
The problem, I think, first I need to understand that the cause for each and every war is greed. Greed for power and greed for money, greed for wealth. And unless we are, whereas India is a peace-loving country, unless we are prepared for war, we are going to be in trouble. So to be strong, we have to be prepared. And to be prepared, we need to have the right amount of equipment, the right amount of training, the right amount of purpose. And for that, leadership, both civil and military, has to be of the highest order. Yes, unfortunately, I do believe that China, for whatever reason, will go for Taiwan, and after that, it will come for India. At the moment, it is already on our borders, creating a lot of trouble. And unless we are able to take a firm stand, unlike what happened in 1962, history will repeat itself. And therefore, victory came to us in 1971 because we were prepared, we trained well, we had the right leadership, political and military, we were equipped well, we had a clear vision, what we wanted to do, and we got the right outcome. Therefore, the citizens of India need to understand that they too have a stake in the security of the country, and they therefore need to know what security is all about. And therefore, we need to influence decision making to ensure that we are always prepared.
Thank you, General Ian, for that response. Thank you, Dayalji, for that
Thank
question.
you.
And friends, like I mentioned earlier, we are fast approaching the end of our session. But before we close, there is one question I would like to ask General Ian. You have written so many wonderful books. What is your next one? Please share with us about your next book.
Okay, my next book is, for the last 12 to 16 years, I've been asked by people to write my story. The Indian Army teaches us not to blow our own trumpet and beat our own drum. And so I resisted writing my own story. But if I finally was persuaded that I've led a reasonably eventful life and there are lots of lessons that people can learn. And so I've written my story. The title of the book is Kartus Saab. That's what my Gurkha soldiers call me. Instead of Cardozo Saab, they call me Kartus Saab. And that's the title of the book. It outlines my journey in life, starting from school, NDA, IMA, my battalion, 62 war, 65 war, 1971 war, and life after retirement. And I do think there is a lesson and a message in every chapter, and I hope that people will like the story. It is for the reader to decide, because the reader is king when judging how good a book is. So let us see. My last book, 1971, which if anybody wants to know about the war, I think you should read it. That book is doing well. It's gone into a reprint, and Penguin has gone into making a video, audio recording of the book. And I hope that Kartus Saab will be equally successful.
Of course, it will be General Ian. The kind of response we have got from the participants today, I think everybody who's there in the session will be amongst the first of those who will pre-order it. So please do share with us when the pre-order link is ready, and we will share it with all the participants, and we'll be amongst the first ones to order the book. And General Ian, there are so many messages we are receiving, and one of those is that this is the best Zoom session that people have attended. And considering that there have been thousands that we have gone through since the time COVID has started, I think this is a great comment to receive, and that is kudos to you, and soldiers like you who protect us. We enjoy our lives because there are people like you who are fighting tooth and nail, limb and life at the borders. So I would like to close this session with a salute to you, and I would urge everybody who's there and who can keep their cameras on to give a standing ovation to General Ian and Indian Army and our soldiers. Thank you so much.
Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you so much, Ashish. God bless.
Thank you.
Glad
Thank
to
you.
be with you on this program.
Thank you, friends. We have another amazing session next Saturday, 5 p.m. Please stay tuned. and look forward to welcoming you. Have a nice long weekend. Have fun. Thank you.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.